2017. Let the record show that all board members are present, as well as Town Manager Michael Units. We will be having a joint meeting with the school committee as well. Dennis, if you want to open your meeting as well.
On behalf of the school committee, I will open this meeting.
Okay. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So as part of the joint meeting, some of the discussion first will be on municipal and school audit. Mr. Units?
The audit is not completed yet. It should be completed soon, and I've asked the auditor to give me some dates that he can attend a Selectmen's meeting to talk on the audit. And I just wanted to ask if anyone has any questions or any items that they would like me to bring to his attention now to see if it would be part of the audit.
A larger question, do we have a rough idea of when they're going to finish?
He usually attends a Selectmen's meeting at the end of January, very beginning of February, so I would expect within a week or two.
Point of order, because it's a mixed meeting and we are on television and a lot of people would enjoy listening and seeing what's going on, I was wondering if the audience could, A, speak up, or if they have something very, very important, go right to the microphone so that at home they can enjoy the proceedings.
Sure, a point well taken. Certainly, the volume here sometimes is not that great. I don't know, Dennis, if you want to take that microphone there, or Michael. I don't know if it'll reach. If it reaches there, if not, I don't know if that can. Yeah. So if that doesn't reach, then I guess, Dennis, I probably would want you maybe up here, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you need me to repeat that question? I can repeat it very loudly.
Yeah, we
Just go
can
ahead.
do that.
Picking me up. So the question was simply, do we have a rough idea of when the audit will be complete?
And they usually attend a meeting at the end of January or the beginning of first meeting of February, so I would expect within a week or two their audit will be complete. And then I was asking if anyone has any questions or issues they'd like me to bring to the auditor's attention and see if it's something that would be addressed in the audit or in his management letter, let me know.
And the auditor is reviewing town side, school side, and kind of how we do things, how we run things.
They do a complete financial audit each year, and they pick different categories each year that they're going to audit. They don't let us know in advance, and they go through different accounts each year.
And this is an accounting audit or a process audit as well?
It's an accounting audit, but if they say they had an issue with the way cash was being handled or turnovers were being handled, that they'd address
Okay.
that in their management letter.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Eunice, do they have any kind of information as far as what manpower levels were, say, 10 years ago compared to today?
They wouldn't look.
They wouldn't
look at anything like that. It would strictly be on the way
financial stuff?
the departments handle the money.
Okay.
Okay. So the expectation, as you said, is the end of January, probably the end of January is normally what the time frame is. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Given none, next on the agenda, we have Denise Ellis, Town Assessor, on receipt tax bills. Good evening. Just watch your step, though, please. On the way back. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. So, I guess I'm here to discuss how the values have gone up this year. So, the reason why your assessments have gone up is because we go by what the market is doing. It's all market-based. We take the sales from 2015, because we need a full year of sales. We analyze all of those sales, and then from there, we put them into our tables. Some houses will go up, some go down, some may stay the same. This year in particular, ranchers were the biggest sale. They skyrocketed. So they went up about 12%, which is pretty high, but that's normal for one house, one style house to go up like that. You know, other years it might be colonials or capes. This year it happened to be ranches. So that's why you see such a significant increase, because that's what the market's doing right now. Condos, they only went up about 2%. Some of those condos went down. Again, some stayed the same, some went up. Any questions or anything on that?
Ms. Steele?
One thing we were hoping you could explain tonight is sometimes people get confused. I think if their taxes are going up, then that means the town is bringing in more money. Can you explain how our individual tax rates are relative to the 2.5% increase that the town's allowed to take on a yearly basis?
So normally when the values go up, your tax rate usually goes down, and that's what it did do this year. I don't really,
So I'm not.
Guess I don't know what your question-
But maybe Mike, you can help. You know how? So people don't understand that the most that we can get on a yearly increase as a town is a 2.5% increase, right? So if somebody sees
Correct.
their tax bill go up 12%, and they're thinking the town all of a sudden has all this money because we've got more money coming in, but it's not true. Everything moves within a certain bracket. Is that?
well, I think the reason why they're seeing their taxes go up is because their assessments are going up. Is that what your question is?
Well, I think what Mary's question is we can only go up 2.5% of.
Right.
So there's one pool of money, it goes up 2.5%. Now, how that pool may get split, because some people's values may go up and the amount of taxes they pay may go up, but someone else, theirs may go down. But it doesn't change the total amount of money that's raised by taxation. That stays the same.
So the overall taxable, or the overall tax income from that only, I shouldn't say only, goes up 2.5%.
Right.
Of that
Right.
2.5%, some homeowners are paying a little bit more, some are maybe staying the same, and some are maybe not.
Yep.
But just to be clear, so that doesn't mean that the town is now getting that 2.5%.
Our tax increment, our 2.5%, was about $790,000 this year. So that's all we're allowed to go up. So you can go up $790,000. So if someone's tax bill went up because their house was now valued more, someone else's may go down. And the rate also went down because.
So it means even, it's not like the town is getting extra money. that
No,
you
you're
weren't-
still only getting
Okay.
that $790,000. That's why the tax rate itself went down a little bit, because
Okay.
values went up.
Got it.
And it's this,
The fluctuation from homeowners may go up or
right,
down.
it's
The
this,
town's overall number doesn't.
and it worked,
that 2.5%.
and it works the other way too. If people's values, sometimes people hear the real estate market is a bust and values are dropping, and they think, oh, my tax bill's going to go down. No, it's not, because your tax rate is going to go up, because we're still going to get that $790,000.
Okay.
Dennis?
And just for clarity, that is separate from new growth tax as well, right?
Say that again?
That is separate from new growth tax.
Right.
So we in theory, we could have a larger than 2.5 increase if we had a lot of new growth in the town.
Well, like this year, we had the 790,000 was our 2.5%, and our new growth, that's new properties that were assessed for the first time, was 350,000 in that area.
Mr. Bayetta?
The question was asked and answered, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And the other question was, people, I guess, what is new growth? New growth is, it's an improvement to the property or an increase in the property's value. So new growth would consist of new construction, any additions that have been put on your home, garages, anything like that. And it can be also, if it was an exempt property that has now gone to a taxable property. For instance, maybe if a church sold their property to somebody that now they can build on it, something like that. So that's what new growth is. So, you know, a lot of people might think that you're going to get millions because you're putting in a big complex, but you have to take the land out of that. So it's not as high as some people may think it is.
Dr. Bayetta.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the information, by the way. I guess my question is that the rate that's set is set equal for home, in other words, residential, business, industrial, open space, it doesn't matter? In this
It doesn't,
community,
yeah, we
it's
only
the
have
same.
one rate, right,
Okay.
right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And again, on the split tax rate, we only have one rate. If we were to do a split tax rate, it would not increase the amount of tax revenue. All it would do is, the commercial would get a higher value, that would bring the residential down, but it's still the same. You wouldn't get an increase in the tax revenue. Okay, and plus it would put probably a burden on the small businesses. They probably couldn't afford the higher rate for a commercial rate.
Okay, understood.
Okay,
Okay.
and anything else that you want to?
Any other questions at all? I think that's it.
Nope, okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Again, watch your step.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Units, discussion on the fiscal 2018 budget process.
The way the budget process works and the way it's outlined in the charter is by the third week in February, I have to present to the school committee, the finance committee, and the board of selectmen anticipated revenues and expenditures. And then the school budget has to be submitted to the town manager 8 weeks prior to town meeting, which in this case would be March 10th. And then the final budget from the town manager to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee is 6 weeks prior to town meeting, or March 27th.
Okay, any questions with that? Okay. Okay, if we could, just next on the agenda, both the school committee and the select board has had an ad hoc group meetings. I think, I'm not sure how long that's been going on, about 2 months maybe?
Since June.
60 days? Since June? I'm sorry, yeah, much longer than that. Time flies. Ms. Steele, if you want to just maybe talk a little bit about that?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So one of the reasons for having the meeting tonight is the ad hoc committee, which is made up of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, 2 members of the school committee, 2 members of the FinCom, and of course our town manager and superintendent have been meeting since June. The purpose was originally, and still is, to bring the boards together with the FinCom for some guidance, to look at perhaps why the override had failed last year, what our needs are going forward, and to have a lot more communication between the 2 boards so that we would be able to bring some information to the public a little bit quicker than we were able to last year. As of this point, there haven't been any decisions that have been made. The budgets are not complete. We don't know for sure if there will be an override, what that number would be. But we thought it was important to have a joint meeting tonight to give everybody the opportunity to meet with us to see where we are at this point and if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask of us. And moving forward, we will be meeting more often, and within the next month, it will be with this specific purpose to actually look at the numbers.
Okay. And then how often do you meet?
We have been meeting on a monthly basis.
Monthly basis?
But I would imagine that may increase in the next couple of months.
Gotcha, okay. Dennis, any comments at all?
I would add one other reason behind the meetings. I think also we're attempting to make sure that it's a little bit thought out this time around. I think last time, at least the perception, maybe the reality was that the overrides, all-encompassing plan was not inclusive of everybody in the town and all the different departments. And I think another purpose this time around is to make sure that it's a little bit better planned out so that everybody is involved in the process and we don't miss any pockets where there's some need.
Right, and I think it's important that these meetings are public, obviously, and we have these public meetings here to notify the town that we we are trying to do our due diligence to look at all aspects of, the funding of the town and what the needs are of the town as well. What it may or may not be, I guess. So it's important, I think, to go through and to take a look with this ad hoc committee at all aspects of, where there may be some shortcomings, maybe there aren't, and, come up with a smart decision, and obviously notify the town of what we're trying to do as a group, and, as a town, as a FinCom, and as a school committee as well. So it's important. Mr. Kimball?
I would add to that, we're trying to do this whole process as transparent as we can. We want everyone to know exactly what we're talking about. These meetings are open. Anyone would like to attend, obviously they can attend. We want to look at what, over the years, as we progress here, without any additional influx of cash, how our town is being run. That's the reason for the audit. We want to get an idea of where we stand today, compared to, say, that's why I was asking about staffing levels, say 10 years ago. And that's something I probably can do on my own. I don't really have to have an auditor do that. With a lot of different questions. We all have different questions. We're trying to find out what the story is about, exactly what the finances are for the town. I think we have to all agree that over the years, for the most part, if we look at our different departments, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of the schools, because they do a very good job of speaking for themselves, but I'll speak on behalf of the town side of government. We have for years seen a decrease in services to the town and have lived within our means to make that happen. And I can give you some examples. When I first came on as a member of this Board of Selectmen, we had a full-time recreation director. We had a full-time COA director, which is now called Human Resources. Charlie Station was open back in those days, is now closed. We've got various departments in here that have gone down in staffing, not up. We have a police department, I haven't got the exact year, but early 90s has never increased in manpower. Still the same as it was in the early 90s, over 20 years ago. So we've got a number of issues that we need to look at from the town side. And to Nez's comment about looking at both sides, yes, we are going to look at the impact on the schools and the impact on the town side of government to figure out exactly what we think we need. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get it, but we need to get a ballpark idea. And the one thing I hear from people in town every day, that if I don't hear it once a day, I don't hear it, is a lack of services we offer. We don't, for your tax dollar, you get nothing. I hate to tell you. We don't get trash pickup. We have public safety, which is, fortunately, if you don't need it, hopefully you don't. God forbid you don't. It is there for you. A highway department, which is now combined with the cemetery department, is actually probably about the same level, if not decreased, over the last 20 years. And then we get a lot of complaints during the summertime about the condition of our cemeteries. And it's because we don't have the manpower. We just can't maintain the services that we'd like to do. So one of the reasons I'm looking at this is to look at the different departments and try to figure out, working with these department heads, and then I'm hoping this ad hoc committee will bring them in so we can talk to them beyond what the finance committee has to do. We'd like to talk to them too and say, I'm not promising you anything, but I'm just curious, what do you really need? And I don't know that answer. All I know is for years we've been sitting here and cutting and cutting and cutting, trying to figure out how we can make this all work. And at some point, it's going to hit a wall, and we're getting pretty close to that. So as a member of the ad hoc committee, my purpose for being there is just to kind of try to keep an open mind to see what other departments are looking for and what services they need. The only comment I'd make on the school side is I went to a private high school, privately owned high school. It was a regional school, and we got nothing for, if we wanted to do anything, we had to pay for it. And with a single mom, that didn't happen for me. So I wasn't able to play sports. I wasn't able to take the bus. I used to walk, actually. Some of the same services we're offering here today in Norton is what I was experiencing 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So the issue is, do we want to continue to have a public school system that works for us, or do we want to look at how we're going to be able to maintain certain levels of participation of different people? I'm concerned there are a number of young people out there that probably want to get involved, but aren't able to because Our fees can continue to climb. They can't take the bus. You know, they can't take the late bus to go home. So there's a bunch of different things we have to look at. But overall, you know, I've been here since 1995, and I've seen a lot of decreases. I can't think of too many departments that have had any increases. I know in recent years we tried to expand our fire department, which really is an ambulance service, if you want to be the truth of the matter is. And we've done that only because through their fees that they raise, we've been able to tap into those accounts in order to pay salaries to add more manpower. That's the only reason we've done it. It's not because we had the extra cash. We did that just because of that. And the other thing I hear constantly, and I live on this side of town, I'm fortunate, I live a mile down the street, is the closing of the Charlie Station. And that's something I want to look at to see if we have any kind of opportunity to figure out a way to get that thing open. Wintercon Station, as we all know, is gone. That was torn down years ago because we allowed our buildings to decay to that point, which brings up another point. I'm on the Capital Improvement Committee. And every year we're scrounging and digging and trying to claw our way through, trying to figure out how we can finance all of these capital improvements we have to make. And the problem is, every year we don't make a lot of them. We put them aside in the spring because we have no idea how much money we're going to have come fall. And fortunately, we managed to scrounge up enough to make it happen. But that's only putting the Band-Aid on the problem. We need to look at how we're going to continue to rebuild the town infrastructure, figure out a way to build a council on aging building where the seniors can actually use it, because right now it's obsolete. The one we have now, it's just not going to work anymore. We need to figure out how we can fix this town hall. We've made some improvements, most of it through donations, by the way. The town hasn't paid for a lot of the stuff we've done in here. We've done this on our own. So, you know, the carpeting you're standing on tonight, I believe, is 1991. That's the original carpeting you have the luxury of being on top of tonight. And, you know, we are making every attempt to try to make improvements on this building, or we need to build another one. But again, you can't do that without some kind of influx of cash, because even if we go out and take loans, every time you take a loan, it dips more into your reserves. You have to pay it every year. So, you know, my reason for being on this committee is just to look at the whole picture and try to figure out a better way to do business. And I just want to know. And I'm not suggesting we're going to do an override. I don't know yet. I do know that I'm getting to a point now where I'm getting frustrated by, as a sitting member of this Board of Selectmen, how I can support the town of Norton and give them the services they're asking for without somehow figuring out a way to do it. And we're forever begging, and we're forever getting donations and such to make it all happen, but there's only so much of that you can do. I'm on various committees. We're trying to raise money. We can't do it. I mean, times are tough. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out. But I know there's going to be a lot of questions and answers, but what I wanted to really stress most of all is these meetings will be public. They will be transparent. So I encourage you to come. And if the room isn't big enough, we'll find a bigger room. But we want you folks to be there. We want to hear your concerns, and we want to express our own and do it in a manner that, you know, will serve the best of everybody that lives in this town. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But I appreciate you all coming out tonight. I mean, great to finally see some people here in the town hall, but I encourage you to continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brimwell.
I don't want to be negative, but I'm kind of disappointed, only because I thought we were having a meeting because I was going to be enlightened on what's been happening for the past 7 months. And also the fact, to me, it sounds like the audit is the audit we normally have. And I thought we were directing it at the problems we're having more. And so I guess I'm kind of bewildered at what's going on, why are we having the meeting? And I was looking for some answers, some input, some facts, something for me to mull over. And basically, I'm just hearing that we're going to start it now. I don't understand.
Understood. Ms. Steele.
Brett, it's fair enough. I understand what you're saying. The problem that we've been up against is we really can't come up with an override number until we actually have the town side of the budget set. The past 6 months, we've been looking at reasons why the last override failed, talking about what ways we think we might want to go forward in the future. But there's really not a lot we can do until we have a number out there. Once we have that number. As far as the audit goes, it is the same company that normally does the audit, but we are able to direct them with some of the questions that we have concerns in the ad hoc committee, and that's why Mr. Units asked if anybody had any questions that they would like the auditor to address. And we feel that we are not willing to go forward with a number for the override until we have this audit in hand, because we expect to use the information that comes from the audit to either substantiate the need for an override or to say that we don't need it.
And if I may.
Yes.
I appreciate that, and when he asked if there were any questions, for anyone who's not involved in the ad hoc committee, I don't know what questions to ask because I don't know what's going on. So I think it's premature for us to offer questions that he should be adding to the audit when we don't know what's already been asked of the auditor or, of the process itself. So like I said, I don't want to be negative. It's just that I think, for me personally, and probably anyone else who hasn't been involved in the ad hoc committee, it's kind of like, we're kind of lost. We don't really, we're kind of on the outside looking in, and we don't have enough knowledge of what's going on to ask the intelligent questions.
I understand where you're coming from. Perhaps it was just being polite, asking if anybody had any questions. We certainly have questions that we're going to be asking them. The fact of the matter is, we're not going to be put in a position to make a decision until we have all the facts in front of us. At the same time, we thought it was important that the public knew that this is something that we're discussing every single month.
So I think, one second, Sherry. So I think it's important, so certainly if a member of the board is feeling that way, I'm sure members of the community are feeling that way right now as well, which I don't want to say it's not a bad thing yet, but this, to me, is almost a kickoff meeting, even though you guys have been meeting for 6 months. So I think it's important from this point forward that, that we, even as a select board and school committee, talk even separately about maybe the things that are going on at the joint meetings, or at the ad hoc meetings, I'm sorry, as best as we possibly can going forward. I think, it's also important, I think, after we have the audit, that maybe we do it tonight. Well, we probably can't do it tonight, but after the audit, we schedule another joint meeting with the school committee to go through this again. Ms. Cohen.
So I think, just to get back to Brad, we decided at our last ad hoc meeting, which was just last week or a month ago, that each of us would update our board. So Mary would update you guys, I would update, or Dinesh would update the school committee, and the FinCom, they would be updated as well from the people who attend our meetings. So that going forward will be happening every meeting, when there's information. I also think when we scheduled this public meeting, we thought we would have the audit results in. So we thought we would be discussing that tonight. We didn't. We waited until this week. They still weren't available. So we said, let's just go forward. We'll come together, meet together, talk about what we have been doing. And then from there, Mike will wait to get or Mr. Unit, sorry, I have to be more formal here. We'll wait to get the audit results. And then he's meeting with department heads this month to figure out what, needs are for the departments in the town side. We've been working school committee as far as what that looks like. And then the ad hoc committee will be meeting again the end of January to kind of come together, put all of it together, and then hopefully have another public meeting the beginning of February to get that information out to you.
Okay.
That's what we discussed at our last ad hoc meeting.
Okay. Dr. Bayada.
Thank you. Well, first of all, in general, I think that the concern and the reason why you have an ad hoc committee is because as a community, we are trying to find out, I'm not a taxpayer in the community, I work for the community, so I'm using the word we in that way, but we're trying to establish the priorities and the needs of this community. And to have the elected officials that are continuously seen, as we all know, perceived by the public that we don't work together. This committee was put together as a way to not just show, but to do the due diligence of crunching numbers to see what it looks like in order to go to the taxpayers with either not going for an override because we're able to, for yet another year, try to get by, or to say, as you stated, the frustration of how am I going to provide services, in my case as the superintendent, where I have priority and mandates within my budget that literally take from Paul or Peter to pay Paul, because that's what we're doing. And the catch-up begins to take place. And so it literally becomes, and people don't like it when I say it, but it practically becomes a class warfare. Because what I'm doing is I'm taking from one population of mandates of students and giving to another population of mandates. And that's been something that we've been doing in public education for a while, and eventually it begins to catch up. I think that I'm going to say for the first time in a while, maybe the first time in history, to have the Board of Selectmen and the school committee looking at an audit together of the town probably has not happened. I'm going to guess that. I don't know that to be true. To get the assessors' discussion tonight of what, to be quite honest, I think some of us said, oh, wait a minute, there was a reassessment? Okay, we need to look at what does that mean, and how does the public know that what it meant to me last year and what it means to me this year could be actually two different things, because my rate has gone up, stayed the same, or gone down. The third part is, what are the budget priorities of the school department, and what are the budget priorities of the town? I.e. substation, i.e., in my case, technology or special education or whatever the priorities become from the two elected boards. The fourth item is, what are the funds available? What is the revenue that the town has exclusive of or upon or after shared costs, i.e. healthcare, of which last year there was a significant savings to the town and the employees were asked to pay more. And that's been done. So again, is that going to be another discussion again? And so what are those available funds? We heard tonight some general numbers of what may be available. And then what are the decisions of, in my opinion, the elected Board of Selectmen, the school committee representing the school department, and the ad hoc committee coming together with, I think, a very important body, which is the finance committee, which its number one priority is to send a balanced budget to town meeting. So to me, that process in itself and coming together tonight, I think will at least allow for folks who were in this view or are in this view of whatever, of an override pro or con, to get further factual information that may sway someone one way or the other, or may sway elected officials like yourselves to make a decision on, does this even happen right now? You know, for me, I'm in charge of or have a responsibility to the 2,600 students that are being educated. I don't have anything to say with police and fire, except that without police and fire in town hall, I can't do my job. You know, it's interesting to note that our police department, Wheaton College, and the school department administrators, we were all at Wheaton this week going through a mock drill. That's what we do today. We mock drill, right? We pull people from their jobs and send them somewhere because that's the reality of our world today. It wasn't the reality of my world when I was a student. When we look at that, and then you look at the dynamics of the highway department cleaning our schools for snow, there's a collaborative level and a cost to the town to that. Those are things that I think need to be further dialogued and discussed and broken up. But I think that what's critical for me, and lastly, is we are in a state in Norton with its school department of doing good things. So it's hard to go back and say, I need a little more, when your product is pretty darn good. The question becomes, when does that catch up? When do you start taking so much from one side to give to another that it catches up? And you're considered, since the first year of Governor Romney being governor of the state, where there was a tweak to the state formula on specifically Chapter 70, you became an ability to pay community. It's hard to say, it's hard to believe, but at that point, you are more like Norwell, Massachusetts, in the formula, Norwell, than any other community that is around you right now. That's a big change in the way that the funding formula gives you money. When you're getting 60 cents on the dollar from the state to educate students, and the goal is to bring you down to 40% over 20 years, something's got to give. That's not an arbitrary number. That's where the goal is. So every year we're seeing a 1.25 to 1.5% decline in that type of funding coming from the state. So if the money isn't coming from a well somewhere, then the decisions have to be made somewhere to cut something, and that doesn't include adding all of that into the responsibilities that the town manager and you folks have on the town side. We've added the fees since 2007. This year, they're $350, $250, $3,500, $2,500, respectfully. We have families paying over $2,000 for transportation and playing sports. $2,000. That's a lot of money to be paying out. And they might have just seen a 12% increase on their taxes on top of that. We have the mandates, as I note. We have this fiscal year 9 students at $200,000 plus to be educated. Severely special education children that we have a responsibility to educate, and we should be educating. They're our kids. We have a responsibility for it. Unfortunately, the way the state formula works, which is somewhat convoluted, but simply put, they give us a reimbursement after $40,000 on 70 cents on the remaining dollar. That's not enough. We want 100% of that back, but we're not going to get it, neither Norton or any other community for that matter. And so before the state legislature this year, and I ask that anybody and everybody in this room, let's call our elected officials. We have 3 fantastic people that work on behalf of you folks at the state legislature. 2 of them I constantly am in contact with. There's a Chapter 70 foundation formula recommendation that will significantly impact sending more money to 160 communities in the Commonwealth for public education. And in some cases, you're talking about millions of dollars coming back. So the question then becomes, where does the state come in? There's been a bill sitting at the State House for 4 years that every student who's so severely special needs, that the Commonwealth should be paying that bill in full, not the local community. That bill has been sitting there forever, and it's not going to go anywhere. So when you look at the dynamics of, trying to run your district, in my case, my responsibility, and you're trying to move forward with technology upgrades, there are no grants. We file for grants. We spend more time filing for grants and get practically nothing back. I know Mike does the same thing on the town side. Just spending the time looking for it in itself is difficult. They're just not out there. And so there's a well that's missing. That's been my argument since last year. The issue becomes that when you have a community that is trying to do good things for kids, be fair to the working folks, and take care of its elderly, that's a difficult balance. That's a difficult thing to do when your revenue, you just heard, is practically the same as it was last year. It's impossible to do. And so the difficult conversation takes place. We can have a conversation about live within your means. How can you live within your means when the same revenue is the same revenue from year to year? We survive on free cash. We survive on free cash. And so for me, it's about putting out some bare facts that give folks good information. It's an emotional issue. We know that. I learned that my first year involved here in Norton as your superintendent. I get that. I learned a lot about that, to be quite honest. But that dialogue and that back and forth can also lead to a good thing. And I think one of those good things was the 2 boards coming together and saying, we need to talk more. We may not be on the same page, but we need to, unlike Washington, Norton is going to have its elected officials come together, regardless of an R or a D, and try to figure out a solution to a significant problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Bramwell?
Just as a follow-up, I heard Ms. Cohen talking about your last meeting. I'd like us to add onto our agendas a report on the ad hoc committee until it's abolished or whatever, from Ms. Steele. I want to read the Judge's version, not the full novel from Mr. Kimball.
Sherry, you were sorry about Mike.
Touche.
Can that be written in the agenda, Mike? No, I'm just kidding.
I'll do that as a motion. How's that?
That might be in the school committee minutes.
Okay, no, that's a good idea. That's a very good idea. So we can have that done. Mr. Units. Okay. Mr. Bayetta,
Could I just ask, because I want to speak not as a
Mike,
citizen, but as an
Mike.
official? As the moderator.
Watch your step. We should move that back.
What?
Come on up.
Watch your
Watch your
step.
step.
Just a quick thing as moderator. I counted before I came here tonight. We have 79 business days left before the annual town meeting, provided you don't move it. But, right now it's scheduled for May 8th. Now, what happens in terms of an override, whether you have one, don't have one, whatever you do, that's up to you guys, and I respect that, and that's great. But I would ask you all, like you could forget, but I would ask you to remember that it has a huge impact on the townspeople and on town meeting. Because if you are going to have an override, or even if we're going to have, I don't know, let's say a zoning article that's going to change your annual town meeting from maybe 300 people to 1,500 people or 2,000 people, which we have had before, then that is not something you do on a month's notice, especially when you have a reasonably new town clerk, an old moderator, and it becomes very difficult. It raises the cost of having a town meeting by, if you have to split into buildings and hire a sound system and do all this, it can raise it by $10,000 to $20,000 just to have a town meeting. So we need to, and when the cable company, which has been very generous with our own cable organization, which has been very generous in paying for large portions of that over the years, when they go to book it, the town meeting's in May, which is a prime graduation event type of time, and when they go to book these organizations, the professional ones, they're already booked. And now you have to go to other ones, or you have to pay more money to get other things. So it becomes very important to plan the town meeting. And when you do an override, as moderator, I don't care, do an override, don't do an override, that's up to you, and the townspeople do it. But one of the things that then comes, which we've faced before, is whether or not you have a choice. You can have a town meeting before you have an override vote, or you can have a town meeting after you have an override vote. This last time we would have had the town meeting after we had the vote first. I know there are a lot of people who think maybe we should have done it the other way around. Just as moderator, throwing aside any feelings that I may have personally, pro-override, against override, whatever, just as the moderator, and speaking from a position of common sense and fiscal responsibility for the town, I tell you that it makes no sense to do anything but have the town meeting after you have the vote. And the reason I say that is, if you look at Easton, just this last year or so, they had an override. They had their town meeting first. They had a huge town meeting. I don't know, maybe a couple thousand, maybe 1,500. It was big. And it took them like 2 hours just to hold the vote. And after all this, the override passed at town meeting by a huge number. Then it went to the ballot like 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, whatever. And the override lost by a huge number. Now, I will tell you, all those people who went to that town meeting and sat there for 3 or 4 hours to have one thing happen and then have it mean absolutely nothing were not happy and might not be so inclined to come back to another town meeting, because why should they? What does it mean? So I would ask you to respectfully to consider only spending the money on that big meeting if you have to. It'd be wonderful if 1,500 people came out to every time. No, I'm lying. It would not be wonderful if 1,500 people came out to every town meeting. It would be a disaster. But it would be, it would be nice if a lot of people came out to town meeting. But don't let that happen. Don't encourage it unless you have to, because you spend an awful lot of money, taxpayer and otherwise, and you discourage people. I can tell you the biggest complaint I get as moderator from people who go to town meeting is, why does it take so long? why do I have to sit here? Why can't I just come in and vote for what I want to vote for and go home? And you try to explain that, and it doesn't go over well. So I'm just asking you, there might be political reasons. Maybe, maybe people who want a yes vote on an override want it first, or maybe people who want no vote think it would be advantageous to go first. I ask you to throw all that out and just go based on common sense. And I ask you, and I know the town manager, having spent a lot of years on the finance committee and on the selectmen, I know the budget process, and I know the town manager's got his hands full, and he has to get state aid figures. It's like, you're trying to create a budget and you don't even know what you've been given to work with yet. Having said that, it's now the middle of January. We've got to plan that. We've got to physically, plan the town meeting, and I know that's way down on the priority list. You've got a lot more important things to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, obviously, one of the priorities is to make sure that, that we're prepared for a town meeting. But again, as we stated tonight, the major priority here is to make sure that we've done our homework and everybody has done their homework to look at, the audit, what are the needs of the town, what are the needs of the school? And in my opinion, that's my own personal opinion, is it's something that we cannot and should not rush into. So if we're trying to rush, quote unquote, rush it into a town meeting, it's, in my opinion, again, it's probably not the right thing to do. And if we have to hold a special town meeting or something other than in May, then maybe that's the case. Maybe that's how it goes. Maybe that's not how it goes. I don't know. But your points are well taken.
No, again, I leave the rest of it to you. I'm just asking, because if all of a sudden we're in the middle to late March, and all of a sudden the decision is made to go forward, and now we have to plan a 2,000-person town meeting in 4 or 5 weeks, you're going to have a lot of trouble doing that. So I just ask you, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Ms. Steele.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gervais, thank you. It's actually one of the things that we wanted to talk about because, as I just mentioned to Mr. Bramwell, we've limited up to this point in what the board can do, but we did realize that the timeline is very important.
Can you speak up? They can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. So what I was saying was, I was thanking Mr. Gervais for coming forward tonight. It's also on our list of things that we wanted to talk about, because as we're meeting as an ad hoc group, there's limited amount of things that we are able to do up to this point, but we do realize that the timeline is very important. And the decision as to how we're going to proceed, whether a ballot question first or town meeting first, would be a decision between the school committee and the Board of Selectmen. So we had asked Mr. Units if you could just give us a review of what the timeline would be like. If we want to go for the ballot question first, what are we looking at versus the town meeting? We're not going to make a decision on it tonight, just to inform both boards, and then the boards can go back and decide how they want to move forward.
If you want to get on the ballot for the April election, the town clerk needs the question by March 20th. And if you did it that way, you'd go to the ballot in April, and if it passed at the ballot, then you'd go to town meeting with a budget that would include the override, and people would vote at town meeting whether to spend that kind of money or not. If you didn't put it on the ballot for April, and you wanted to go the other way and have town meeting first, you would have to vote an A and a B budget. And so you'd say you vote an A budget would be a balanced budget based on no override. B would be a balanced budget based on an override. And then you'd have to schedule an election, and you'd once again have to give the town clerk 30 days notice to prepare, get the ballots printed and schedule the election.
Okay, Mr. Kimball. And then-
Yeah, it was a conversation we had, by the way. I never knew this, folks, but you cannot hold a town meeting beyond the borders of the town of Norton. The reason I now know that is because we asked about the Comcast Center. We thought, where could you put a bunch of people in this area that would fit? And I asked Mr. Eunice to make a couple of phone calls, and he actually talked with town council. So it's something that has come up on the radar already. We kind of recognize that, but we're going to have to find a venue here in Norton somehow that can handle it. And really, the only thing we have is schools. We don't really have anything else that can handle it, so.
Dr. Bayetta.
Thank you. So the only concern for the school department, as some of you are aware, is that we have a state mandate of June 15th of each fiscal year of notifying employees that they are being laid off effective, in my case, the last day of school. So regardless of when the last day of school is right now, it's June 16th, I would be notifying folks prior to the 15th. I typically do it the Monday or Tuesday of that week, just in case if folks are sick or not there, I can still make sure that they're getting the notice. So that's a date that is important. Now, we can pre-set up things. There's a lot of emotion that goes with that because there's a lot of talk within my staff. As you know, it has some seniority-based decisions, so it causes angst. And then the biggest concern is, do people begin to look at employment in other places because it's so late? Remember, most school systems are doing most of their hiring posted right after April vacation. We begin interviewing, for example, if I knew I had to have a certain position, I'll begin interviewing right after that because that's when candidates are out. So just that June 15th date, just to keep that on the radar.
Okay, again, yeah, very important dates. Okay. Okay, Dr. Bayed, I think I wanted you to speak on just the water thing. We have a few minutes here. Though.
Sure, so in 30 seconds, as you may have read, seen, so on, we've had, through the governor's office, a release of $2 million through public facilities for the purposes of testing faucets, pickets, fixtures within schools, and so on and so forth. We decided as a school department to have every fixture in every school, every faucet, you name it, done in all 5 of our schools at no cost to the local budget or local bills, if you will, or the budget. And we came back with, believe it or not, a significant number of hits at Norton High School. And most of it had to do around copper. And because it's new fixtures and new soldering that takes place because it's a newer building, we saw that. So what we did is we began a process of shutting down faucets that were showing lead and/or copper. And since then, on Christmas Eve, Wade Lozada, Director of Facilities, came in on Christmas Eve with a third-party consultant company that we hired to do a retesting, which did have a cost to my budget of, I believe it's about $1,200. And we have since then been able to clear out certain faucets for purposes of washing hands, et cetera. We now have to go through a second round of that, or a third test, to actually determine that it's fully cleared. So during that time, we also spent $2,300 on bottled water for students and staff because we just didn't want the kids to even attempt drinking from it. Most of our students bring in some type of water anyways, but every once in a while when you give out free water, you end up spending a little bit more on free water. So, but things are good. We have a plan in place. The buildings are safe. The kids are safe.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, Mr. Savas, I think you probably need to end or close your.
Oh, adjourn? Okay. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Whoa, he didn't open it up.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
I didn't hear him.
Very beginning of the meeting, he did.
Pardon me?
At the beginning of the meeting, that was the first thing that we did.
What did you do?
Oh, I think he's looking for public comment.
He just made a motion to adjourn.
Yes,
The school committee meeting.
Oh, the school,
the school committee, correct.
so this meeting will be closed?
That's correct.
When it's seconded?
Yes.
May I have a point of order, because I had something I would like to say.
So,
Can you reject at this point? And it'll be less than a minute.
yes,
So I have the floor?
yes, you do.
My concern is the
You-
word
If you could
audit.
please come up.
My concern is
If-
Watch out for the cord.
Don't worry, my attorneys will call you. Mike, Ralph Stefanelli, 12 James Street. My concern would be, the word audit's been bandied about, and I love the word. But I have an old saying, I wrote this down, I'd like to share it with the group. It just says, hey, I have an old saying that if your mother tells you she loves you, check it out and verify. So with check it out and verify, who is the company that's doing the audit? And is it, an in-house firm? Is it a firm that would verify all of the accounts and make sure that the nickels and dimes were spent and not encumbered or spent unwisely? That's my question.
Okay, Mr. Evans?
It's not an in-house audit. It's a company that is hired to do the audit. They come in here and they actually take up this whole table with all the different people they bring in. And they're here for a week auditing all accounts, and they go over to the school department and audit accounts at the school department also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Less than a minute.
Watch your step.
Better than Mr. Kimball.
There's another spot.
Someone else
Yes.
has a question.
Yes, please.
Second.
Okay. We just have another meeting that has to start at 7 o'clock, so that's why.
Apologize, I
No,
didn't
no,
hear
no,
about
no
the
reason to
beginning either.
apologize. Thank you.
My name's Malcolm Trachtenberg. I'm chairman of the trustees of Great Brook Condominium, and I have the answer to your problems about taxes. Have more adult communities. We pay taxes like everybody else. We do not use your plowing, garbage. We take care of our own roads and facilities. And most important, we have no kids in the school. And with an increase in taxes or an override of 2.5, the 2.5, you're going to drive the elderly out of town. Because not only are the taxes going to go up greatly, but also, and this is a subject we talked about a little while ago, we've been assessed by the water department a fee of, for example, Great Brook, of $13,000 a year, which comes to about a little over 2% of what our condo fees are. And all this added together is going to drive your elderly people out. They will not be able to afford living in the town of Norton. Further, and I don't know if this is a fair thing or not, but Boston Magazine did a study on the 125 school systems in the Commonwealth. Of those systems, our town of Norton, and I think education is very important, don't get me wrong, came out 79th out of 125. There are many schools above us, including Mansfield, Foxborough, etc., which spend about the same amount per student that we do, and came out considerably higher than the town of Norton. And my question is the school board checking into seeing what these schools are doing that are providing their students maybe better education than what we are providing based on the fact that we're 79? Foxborough, if I look at it, is probably up to 40. Mansfield is somewhere near there. And is this not a place maybe to save some money by getting to other school systems, finding out what they're doing right, that they're rated higher than what Norton's school system is? That's the end of my, thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Marty?
I just think that you can't take those statistics unless you know what the criteria was for deciding, were they based upon income, were they based upon MCAS scores? I mean, Boston Magazine is an interesting magazine, but I think we need more statistics, information than that.
They based it on.
So again, that's something that, can be looked at or can be looked at, throughout this whole process, I would think. Ms. Gomes?
I know, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I just want to go back to you on that, because I understand it's difficult for the elderly. I totally get that, and I feel for you. But I also need you to understand, it is hard for me and my family. We spend a lot of money to bus our kids to school, to play sports so that they stay active in school. there are a lot of families, my friends, who moved out of town because it just is too much. They'd rather pay more taxes and get more services. So I hear what you're saying, but on the other end of that, young families are actually leaving town as well.
Well, I think you're going to, and I think education is very important to our kids. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
This is a debate. I think that-
No, I know. So again, this is conversation that we'll have, at ad hoc meetings or, school committee meetings or selectmen meetings as well, as we go forward. Okay. Dennis?
Okay, where was I?
Can I just make a comment?
So,
I just wanted to make one comment.
So let me be clear. So I have to actually start a selectmen's meeting very soon. So I have no problem with you making a comment, but this will be the last comment for tonight.
Okay.
There will be meetings going forward as we go along, that everybody can go to those meetings as they attend, and they can come to our selectmen meetings every Thursday night, and we can discuss this as we go along. But there are deadlines that we have to follow with state-regulated guidelines.
Exactly.
So ma'am, if you would, again, you have to come up here and speak though, please. And I'm sorry to be short, I just have certain guidelines that I have to follow.
Watch your
State
step.
guidelines. Yeah, please watch your step though.
Hi, my name is Joanne O'Brien, and I've lived in Norton for 13 years now. I'm a retired RN. I've worked all my life, and I believe that the school system in the town is very important, and we paid our taxes and everything. But, I was interested when we were talking about, how you have a budget and you have to stay within your budget, and you don't get any pot that comes your way for so many years. Well, when you're a young person, you're going up the ladder usually. You're a working young family, and you hope that your salary is going to increase as you go along, which will help you to provide more for your family. But I have to say, when you start living on a fixed income, you have no other pot but what you've provided for yourself. I'm just making that as a comment. That's the other side of things. I have grandchildren in this Norton school system, and it's very important for me to see that they have the things that they need to succeed. But I also see the other side of it, and when I see a young person get up and say they're struggling, I believe that. But you have to realize that most people have 2 incomes, and they're still working, and they're working their way up to the ladder, up to the top. You have a means to make extra money, usually. That's all I have to say. There's just another comment.
Thank you for your comment.
Do it quick.
okay, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I would entertain a motion to have a temporary recess for about 5 minutes, and then, again, the selectmen meeting will begin in about 5 minutes.
And I do want to thank you guys for having us tonight.
Yes,
Thank you very much.